My name is Chip Harrison, 65 years old, and I devoted my entire life to my daughter Amanda. After my wife died, I became both parents, sacrificed promotions, and poured every dollar into giving her the best life possible. So when Amanda looked me in the eyes last Thanksgiving and said, "The best gift would be if you disappeared," something inside me finally broke. What she never expected was how I would take her at her word. Let me know where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button and prepare yourself for what I left on her desk that destroyed my family. I was born and raised in Boston, the son of a factory worker and a school secretary. Life was simple but good. I studied engineering at Boston University, working nights to pay my tuition. That is where I met Margaret, the love of my life, during my junior year. She was studying literature, with dreams of becoming a professor. We were complete opposites in many ways, but something just clicked between us. We got married right after graduation, both 22 and full of dreams. Margaret and I tried for years to have children. 7 long years of doctor visits, treatments, disappointments, and tears. Just when we had started looking into adoption, Margaret discovered she was pregnant. We were overjoyed beyond words. Amanda came into our world on a snowy February morning, and I still remember holding that tiny bundle for the first time, promising to always protect her. Life was beautiful for many years. Margaret taught at the local community college, while I worked my way up at Wellington Engineering. We were not wealthy, but we managed our money carefully to provide Amanda with music lessons, summer camps, and family vacations. Margaret kept detailed journals about Amanda growing up, documenting every milestone with her beautiful prose. When Amanda turned 15, our world shattered. Margaret was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. Despite the best treatments we could find, the prognosis was grim. I remember sitting with Amanda, explaining that her mother might not have much time left. Margaret fought bravely for 2 years, but eventually, cancer won. I lost my soulmate, and Amanda lost her mother at 17, just as she was preparing for college. Those next years were the hardest of my life. I was drowning in grief while trying to be strong for my daughter. I turned down a significant promotion that would have required travel because Amanda needed stability. Instead, I took a lateral position that allowed me to be home every evening. My boss never quite forgave me for that decision, but I never regretted it for a moment. Amanda needed her remaining parent present, not just financially supporting her. Amanda got accepted to Northwestern University, her dream school. The tuition was steep, but I had been saving since the day she was born. I sold our family boat and took out a small loan against my retirement to make it happen. Sending her off to college was bittersweet. I was immensely proud, but returned to an empty house that no longer felt like home without Margaret or Amanda. During her sophomore year, Amanda met Brian Sullivan, a business major from a wealthy Connecticut family. When she brought him home for Christmas, I tried to welcome him warmly, though something about his dismissive attitude toward service workers raised a red flag. But Amanda was smitten, and I wanted her to be happy. They dated throughout college and got engaged at their graduation ceremony. After college, when Amanda and Brian were struggling to afford their first apartment in Chicago, I liquidated some of my investments to help them with the down payment. $20,000 was a significant amount for me, but seeing their joy made it worthwhile. Brian promised to pay me back someday, a promise that was never mentioned again. Their wedding was another financial stretch. Brian's parents could have easily covered the entire event with their hedge fund fortune, but they contributed only a token amount, claiming they were teaching the kids financial independence. I emptied my savings to give Amanda the wedding day she deserved. $60,000 later, watching her walk down the aisle in Margaret's restored wedding dress was worth every penny. I gave a speech that night about how proud Margaret would have been, and for a brief moment, I felt her presence beside me. 2 years later, Thomas was born, followed by Sarah 18 months after. My grandchildren became the light of my life. I drove the 4 hours to Chicago nearly every other weekend to spend time with them, always bringing small gifts and taking lots of pictures to display around my house. I started college funds for both of them, contributing what I could from each paycheck, determined to secure their future education as I had done for their mother. Last year, I finally retired after 40 years with the same company. I had a modest pension and careful savings, enough to live comfortably, though not extravagantly. I thought retirement would mean more time with family, perhaps even moving closer to Chicago. But over the past year, something had shifted in my relationship with Amanda. Our phone calls grew shorter and less frequent. Invitations to visit became rare. When I did visit, conversation felt strained, with Brian often working through family gatherings on his laptop. I tried talking to Amanda about it once, asking if I had done something to upset her. She assured me everything was fine. They were just busy with the kids' activities and Brian's new partnership at his investment firm. I believed her because I wanted to. After all, she was my only child, my connection to Margaret, and the person for whom I had gladly sacrificed so much. This past November, I invited Amanda, Brian, and the grandchildren for Thanksgiving at my home. I spent 3 full days preparing, following all of Margaret's recipes that Amanda had grown up loving. I made her favorite cornbread stuffing, cranberry relish from scratch, and the special pumpkin cheesecake that had been our family tradition since Amanda was small. The house was filled with the aromas that once made our home feel magical during holidays. I set the dining table with care, using the good china that had belonged to Margaret's mother, placing family photographs around the room, and even finding the handmade turkey decorations Amanda had created in elementary school. I wanted the day to be perfect, a reminder of our family bonds and traditions. Everything was ready by 11, the time they had promised to arrive. By 2 in the afternoon, they still hadn't shown up. I called Amanda's cell phone 3 times before she answered, sounding harried. "Sorry, Dad. We got a late start. Traffic is terrible. We should be there in an hour." No explanation for not calling, no apology for the 3-hour delay. I kept the food warm and tried to maintain my enthusiasm. When they finally arrived at 3:30, Thomas and Sarah barely looked up from their tablets to greet me. At 11 and 9 years old, they used to run into my arms. Now they mumbled hello while continuing their games. Brian immediately asked for my Wi-Fi password, explaining he needed to check some work emails. Amanda walked through the house with a critical eye, commenting that the place really shows its age, and asking if I had considered downsizing to something more manageable. During dinner, I tried sharing stories about their grandmother, thinking the children might enjoy hearing about Margaret's adventures teaching literature in rural Ghana before we were married. Amanda cut me off mid-sentence. "Dad, the kids don't need a history lesson while they are eating. Pass the potatoes, please." The dismissal stung, but I smiled and passed the dish. When dessert came, I made an announcement I had been excited about for weeks. I wanted to let you all know that I have established proper college funds for Thomas and Sarah. I have been contributing since they were born, and there is already $35,000 for each of them. By the time they are ready for college, it should cover at least the first couple of years at a state school. I had expected gratitude, perhaps even emotion. Instead, Brian glanced at Amanda, with a look I couldn't quite interpret. Amanda cleared her throat. "That is nice, Dad, but we have already set up 529 accounts for both kids. Brian's firm has excellent investment options that have been performing very well." The subject was changed before I could respond. After dinner, while I was rinsing dishes in the kitchen, I overheard Amanda and Brian talking in the living room. Their voices were low, but in my old house, sound carries through the heating vents. "We need to talk to him about the house," Amanda was saying. "It is ridiculous for him to rattle around in this big place alone. The property taxes alone must be eating his retirement." "Agreed," Brian replied. "Plus, the market in this area is hot right now. If he sold, he could clear at least $350,000 after the mortgage is paid off. That would give him plenty for a nice 1-bedroom in that senior community we looked at." I stood frozen at the sink, water running over my hands. They had been researching senior living facilities for me, making plans for my home, my life, without even consulting me. The dishes remained half-washed as I excused myself, claiming fatigue. They left shortly after, taking plates of leftovers I had carefully packaged. Amanda gave me a quick hug at the door, promising to call soon. I watched their luxury SUV disappear down the street, a heaviness settling in my chest that had nothing to do with the rich meal. The week after Thanksgiving, Thomas had a role in his school Christmas play. He was playing a shepherd in the nativity scene, and though it was a small part, I was determined to be there to support him. Amanda had mentioned it during their visit, saying it would be on December 4th at 7 p.m. I marked my calendar immediately. I drove the 4 hours to Chicago, fighting through a light snowstorm, arriving at the elementary school an hour early to get a good seat. As I approached the front office to ask directions to the auditorium, I noticed the marquee sign, Annual Christmas Pageant, December 3rd, 7 p.m. My stomach dropped. I had missed it by 1 day. Confused, I called Amanda. When she answered, I explained the situation. "Oh," she said, sounding distracted. "Did I get the date wrong? Sorry about that, Dad. It was definitely last night." Thomas did great, though. Brian recorded it on his phone. "I will send it to you." "Was it always scheduled for the 3rd? I asked quietly. A pause. "I think so. It must have been just a mix-up. Listen, since you are in town, do you want to come over for dinner tomorrow? We are pretty busy tonight." I declined, making an excuse about needing to get back home before the weather worsened. The recording of Thomas' performance never arrived in my inbox. That evening in my hotel room, I opened Facebook to at least see photos from the event. What I found crushed me further. There were dozens of pictures from the past few months. Thomas' birthday party at a science museum, Sarah winning a swimming competition, a weekend trip to a lakeside resort, family dinner at an upscale restaurant with Brian's parents. Events I knew nothing about. Events I had never been invited to. The final blow came when I spotted photos of Thanksgiving dinner at Brian's parents' estate, posted November 18th, a full week before they came to my house. The caption read, "So grateful for our family Thanksgiving tradition. Nothing beats Grandma Sullivan's turkey." They had celebrated the holiday with Brian's family first, then treated my dinner as an obligation to be endured. 2 weeks later, I was Christmas shopping at the mall when I ran into Brian's mother, Judith Sullivan. We had met only a handful of times, but she recognized me. After awkward pleasantries, she mentioned how excited she was about their upcoming family trip to Aspen. "The first week of January, right? Amanda must be looking forward to it," I said, pretending I knew all about it. "Oh no, we leave December 26th. A full 2 weeks at our condo, Brian finally taking real time off, is our Christmas miracle, and the ski instructor they hired for the children comes highly recommended." She looked at me curiously. "Will you be joining them this year?" "Not this time," I managed to reply. "Too much going on at home." That evening, I called Amanda directly. "I ran into Judith today," I said after basic greetings. "She mentioned your Aspen trip. That sounds wonderful." A moment of silence. "Oh, we were going to tell you about that this weekend. It was a last-minute thing. Brian's bonus was larger than expected." "I see," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "When exactly are you leaving?" "December 26th, she admitted, "through January 9th. So you will not be here for New Year's Eve." We had spent every New Year together since Margaret died. It was our tradition to look at old photo albums and talk about hopes for the coming year. "I am sorry, Dad. The kids are really excited about skiing. Maybe we can celebrate when we get back?" I ended the call shortly after, sitting alone in my kitchen as the reality sank in. I wasn't being included in their lives anymore. I was an afterthought, an obligation, someone to be managed rather than embraced. Still, I tried once more to address the growing distance. I drove to Chicago the following weekend, asking Amanda to meet me for lunch while Brian took the kids to their activities. At a quiet cafe, I carefully broached the subject. "Amanda, I feel like something has changed between us. Have I done something to upset you or Brian?" She looked uncomfortable, stirring her coffee endlessly. "Of course not, Dad. We are just in a really busy season of life. The kids have so many activities, and Brian's work is demanding. I understand busy, I said gently. But I have noticed I am not being included in family events. Holidays seem like obligations. I found out about your Aspen trip from Judith, not from you. She sighed, looking annoyed rather than concerned. Dad, you are being sensitive. We do not need to report every activity to you. We are adults with our own lives. Of course you are, I assured her. I just want to be part of your lives, not just an obligation visit a few times a year. You are part of our lives, she said, checking her watch. I need to get going. Thomas has karate at 3. The conversation left me feeling even more disconnected, my concerns dismissed rather than addressed. On my way out of town, I stopped to drop off early Christmas gifts for the children, since I wouldn't see them during the actual holiday. Amanda wasn't home, but the babysitter let me in. While there, I noticed Amanda's planner open on the kitchen counter. I wasn't looking to snoop, but a notation caught my eye. Talk to Dad's financial advisor? Check assets and options. Next to it was a note. Elder care options with 3 facilities listed below, complete with price ranges. My stomach twisted. They weren't just excluding me. They were actively planning my future without my input or consent. The final piece of evidence came when I hugged Thomas goodbye. Grandpa, he whispered, Mom said we're not supposed to talk to you about Aspen or the new car. It was in that moment I realized my daughter was deliberately keeping me at arm's length, while simultaneously making plans for my assets and my future. The pain was almost physical, a crushing weight on my chest as I drove the long hours home alone. After discovering the extent of Amanda and Brian's behind-my-back planning, I decided a direct confrontation was necessary. Instead of letting resentment build, I would address the situation head-on and try to rebuild our relationship. I planned a special family dinner at my home in mid-December, before their Aspen trip, sending formal invitations by mail to make it feel important. I spent days preparing, not just the food but meaningful gifts and photo albums I thought might remind Amanda of our family bonds. I made Margaret's famous pot roast, the dish Amanda had always requested for her birthday dinners growing up. I baked rolls from scratch and prepared her favorite chocolate raspberry cake. The table was set with candles and place cards. I had even created small gift bags for Thomas and Sarah, each containing a handwritten letter about a special memory I shared with their mother at their age, along with small keepsakes from those times. For Amanda, I had carefully restored her mother's silver locket, placing a tiny photo of the 3 of us inside, along with a recent one of Amanda with her own children. For Brian, I had found a rare first edition of his favorite financial author's book at a specialty shop. They arrived 30 minutes late, but I maintained my optimism. The kids were more engaged this time, Thomas especially excited to tell me about his karate progress. During appetizers, everything seemed pleasant enough, though Brian was typically distracted by his phone. As we moved to the main course, the conversation shifted when Brian mentioned property values in my neighborhood. The Petersons down the street sold for $400,000, he said, cutting his meat. Shocking for the square footage, but location matters. Yes, Amanda joined in, and they hadn't updated anything. Your kitchen alone would add $30,000 to your asking price with those new countertops. They were discussing the value of my home, as if it were already on the market, as if my moving out were a foregone conclusion. If you sold by March, Brian continued, still not making eye contact, we could have you settled in Lakeside Seniors by summer. They have a garden club I think you would enjoy. I set down my fork. Excuse me? Amanda jumped in. Dad, we have been thinking about this carefully. This house is too big for one person. The stairs are getting dangerous for someone your age. The maintenance alone must be overwhelming. My age? I am 65, not 95. I manage just fine. And when did we decide I would be selling my home? I kept my voice level, despite the anger rising in my chest. Be reasonable, Brian said, finally looking up from his plate. This place is eating up your retirement funds. The smart financial move is to downsize now, while the market is strong. And what about what I want? This is the home I shared with your mother. I said to Amanda. "This is where we raised you. Every corner holds memories." Amanda rolled her eyes slightly. "Dad, they are just walls and floors. Memories come with you. And frankly, living in the past isn't healthy." "Living in the past. Is that what you think I am doing?" "Well, you have not exactly built a new life since Mom died. No dating, few friends, just sitting in this big house alone with old photographs. It is concerning." The conversation was veering into territory I hadn't expected. My personal life choices were apparently another problem they had discussed without me. "And the college funds you set up?" Brian added. "Completely unnecessary and, honestly, underperforming. If you had consulted us, we could have directed those funds more efficiently. They were gifts for my grandchildren," I said quietly. "Not investments for you to manage." Amanda sighed dramatically. "Dad, this is exactly the problem. You make these grand gestures without considering the practical aspects. Just like this dinner tonight. All this effort for what? We have busy lives." A simple conversation would have sufficed. Something inside me shifted. The careful control I had maintained cracked. A simple conversation? When exactly would that happen, Amanda? When you are excluding me from family events? When you are planning my future behind my back? When you are teaching my grandchildren to keep secrets from me? Her eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected me to know about that. "Yes, Thomas told me he wasn't supposed to mention Aspen or your new car. Why would you tell your children to hide things from their grandfather?" Brian stood up. "I think we should go. You are clearly upset and not thinking rationally." "Not thinking rationally? You come into my home, eat the meal I spent all day preparing, and casually discuss selling my house out from under me. And I am the irrational one?" Amanda's face flushed with anger. "God, Dad, this is so typical. You always play the victim. Everything you have ever done was a sacrifice, right? Poor Chip. Giving up everything for his family." "Amanda," I said, genuinely shocked by her tone. "Where is this coming from?" She stood now too, voice rising. "You want to know what would be a real gift to this family? If you just disappeared. If you stopped with the guilt trips and the outdated advice and the embarrassing stories. If you stopped being such a burden with your constant neediness." The room fell silent. Thomas and Sarah looked down at their plates, uncomfortable but not particularly surprised, which told me this wasn't the first time they had heard such sentiments. Brian wouldn't meet my eyes, his silence a form of agreement. I looked at my daughter, this person I had raised, loved, sacrificed for. "Is that truly how you feel? That I am a burden?" "Yes," she said, not backing down. "We have our own family now. We do not need you hovering and judging and making everything so complicated." I nodded slowly, a strange calm replacing the hurt. "I understand. Thank you for being honest." "We should go," Brian repeated, gathering the children. "Of course," I said, standing. "Let me get your coats." I walked them to the door, maintaining my composure through sheer willpower. The kids hugged me quickly, clearly confused by the tension. Amanda didn't look back as they walked to the car. After they left, I sat alone at the carefully set table, the candles still burning, the special gifts unopened beside each place. The words echoed in my head. The best gift would be if you disappeared. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, reliving every moment, every sacrifice, every decision that had led to this point. I thought about Margaret, wondering what she would advise. By morning, something had shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, but above it was a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I woke the morning after that devastating dinner with a strange sense of peace. The pain was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but my mind was remarkably clear. Amanda's brutal words had cut deep, but they had also severed something that had been binding me to a situation that was no longer healthy or reciprocal. If disappearing was what she wanted, perhaps it was time I honored that request, but on my own terms. My first call was to Sam Wheeler, my financial advisor of 20 years. "I need to see you today," I told him. "It is important." 3 hours later, I sat in Sam's office as he pulled up my accounts. "You are in excellent shape, Chip," he said, reviewing the numbers. "Your pension plus Social Security covers your basic expenses. Your investments have performed well. The house is nearly paid off, with just $40,000 remaining on the mortgage. What exactly are you concerned about?" "I want to know my options if I decide to make some major life changes," I explained, "including paying off my daughter's mortgage." Sam's eyebrows shot up. "That is a significant gift. Their mortgage balance is what exactly?" $475,000, I said. "I checked county records online." He whistled low. "That would require liquidating a substantial portion of your investments." "Are you sure about this?" "It would impact your long-term security." "I am. But I need to know if it is financially feasible without leaving me destitute." After an hour of analysis, Sam confirmed what I had suspected. Between my pension, remaining investments, and Social Security, I could make this work. I would need to live more modestly, but I wouldn't be impoverished. "But Chip," he added, "this is your retirement security we are talking about. What is driving this decision?" I simply said, "It is complicated. Family matters." From Sam's office, I went directly to see Michael Grossman, my attorney. I explained what I wanted to do and why I needed everything legally documented. "I want no possibility of this being contested or misinterpreted," I said. Michael was concerned, but professional. "This is highly unusual, Chip. Paying off someone's mortgage without their knowledge or consent. Are you absolutely certain?" "More certain than I have been about anything in a long time," I replied. We spent the next several hours drafting documents. A letter to Amanda and Brian's mortgage company, a notarized statement of gift, and paperwork, ensuring the transaction could not be reversed once completed. Michael insisted on including language that protected me from any claims that I was not of sound mind when making this decision. "What about your will?" he asked before I left. "Leave it as is for now," I said. "Amanda is still my only child, but let us add a condition that she cannot sell or transfer ownership of specific family heirlooms I have listed. Those need to go to Thomas and Sarah when they turn 25. My next stop was the travel agency downtown. The elderly agent looked surprised when I requested a one-way ticket to Kauai, Hawaii. "No return date?" she asked. "No," I said firmly. "I am not sure when or if I will be coming back." As she processed the ticket, I browsed brochures about the island, something settling in my soul at the images of serene beaches and lush mountains. A new chapter, I thought. A complete break from the cold Midwest winter and the colder family dynamics I was leaving behind. That evening, I began writing the most difficult letter of my life. I sat at Margaret's old desk by the window, where light snow was beginning to fall. "Dear Amanda," I started, then stopped, overwhelmed by the complexity of what I needed to express. "How do you summarize a lifetime of love, sacrifice, disappointment, and now, painful resolution?" I began again, working through the night, writing, crossing out, rewriting. By morning, I had a 10-page letter that traced our journey together from her birth through Margaret's death, my years of single parenting, her college years, marriage, and children. I detailed my perspective on our relationship without accusation or bitterness, simply stating facts and my feelings. I acknowledged that families evolve and children build their own lives, but explained how her deliberate exclusion and dismissal had wounded me deeply. I wrote about her words at dinner, how they had crystallized something I had been feeling but couldn't articulate. "When you said the best gift would be my disappearance," I wrote, "you gave voice to what your actions have been showing me for months. I have become an inconvenience in your life rather than a valued family member. While this realization brings immense pain, it also brings clarity. I will not remain where I am unwanted." The next day, I gathered materials for what I would leave her. In a large manila folder, I placed the letter I had written, complete documentation of the mortgage payoff, which Michael had expedited through his contacts, A USB drive containing a video message I had recorded that morning. Selected pages from Margaret's journals about Amanda's childhood and our hopes for her future. A timeline I created documenting major sacrifices I had made for Amanda throughout her life, from career opportunities declined to financial support provided. Family photographs spanning 4 decades. I drove to Chicago one last time the following day. I timed my arrival for midday, when I knew both Amanda and Brian would be at work and the children at school. Using my emergency key, I let myself into their home and placed the folder squarely in the center of Amanda's desk in her home office, where she would definitely see it. Before leaving, I took one final look around the beautiful home my sacrifice had helped make possible. The mortgage payoff would free up over $3,000 in their monthly budget. Perhaps that financial breathing room would bring them happiness. Perhaps someday they would understand what drove me to this decision. As I walked out the front door, I realized I was not angry anymore. The hurt remained, but the bitterness had dissolved, replaced by a sense of taking control of my own life, for the first time in decades. I had defined myself as Amanda's father for so long that I had forgotten who Chip Harrison was beyond that role. The next morning, I took one last walk through my home of 30 years, touching familiar walls, looking at photographs, saying goodbye to the space where Margaret and I had built our life together. I had arranged for a property management company to maintain the house in my absence. I wasn't ready to sell, despite what Amanda and Brian had planned for me. With 2 suitcases and a carry-on containing essential documents and keepsakes, I locked my front door and took a taxi to the airport. My flight to Kauai would depart in 3 hours, carrying me nearly 4,000 miles from the only life I had ever known. On the flight to Hawaii, I found myself seated next to an elderly Hawaiian woman named Leilani, who was returning home after visiting her granddaughter in Chicago. When she asked if I was vacationing, I surprised myself by telling her the truth. "I am starting over," I said simply. She studied my face with kind eyes. Sometimes the bravest journey is the one that takes us away from what hurts us, even when that is family. Her wisdom and lack of judgment were exactly what I needed in that moment. The plane descended over Kauai as the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the dramatic landscapes below. Mountains covered in lush greenery rose from the coastline, and even from the air, I could see the white sand beaches contrasting with the turquoise water. It looked nothing like the flat Midwestern landscape I had left behind, and that felt appropriate for this new chapter. I had arranged a small rental car and booked a modest cottage near Hanalei Bay for the first month. As I drove from the airport in Lihu to the North Shore, following coastal roads that wound between mountains and ocean, I felt both terrified and exhilarated. At 65, I was starting completely fresh in a place where I knew no one. The cottage turned out to be perfect. A 1-bedroom structure with a small lanai overlooking a garden bursting with tropical flowers. It was simple but clean, with ceiling fans, rattan furniture, and windows that could be left open to catch the trade winds. The owner, a retired doctor from California, lived in the main house on the property and had left a basket of local fruits and coffee on the counter with a welcome note. That first week was a blur of practical matters and emotional processing. I found the nearest grocery store, located a laundromat, and got a library card. I set up my laptop to manage my remaining finances online. I walked the beach every morning, sometimes crying as I watched the sunrise, working through the grief of essentially losing my only child and grandchildren. My phone buzzed constantly the first few days after I left the folder on Amanda's desk. Texts escalated from confused, "Dad, where are you? Call me," to angry, "What the hell do you think you are doing?" to panicked, "Dad, we are really worried. Please just let us know you are okay." I didn't answer. I wasn't ready. I needed this clean break, this time to figure out who I was beyond Amanda's father. Brian called my neighbors, who truthfully said they didn't know where I had gone. Amanda called the local hospitals, then the police, who explained that as a competent adult, I had every right to go somewhere without telling my family. The mortgage company confirmed the loan had been paid in full, which only confused them further. On my 10th day in Kauai, I was sitting on a bench overlooking the bay when an older man sat down beside me. "You are not a tourist," he said matter-of-factly. It wasn't a question. "How can you tell?" I asked. "Tourists take pictures and move quickly. You sit and watch, really see the place." He extended his hand. Franklin Nakoa, retired high school teacher. Chip Harrison, retired engineer, and recently relocated. That chance meeting became my first real friendship on the island. Franklin, born and raised on Kauai, became my unofficial cultural guide. He introduced me to local foods I would never have tried on my own, taught me basic Hawaiian phrases, and included me in his morning coffee group of other retired men who met at a cafe in Hanalei. Through Franklin's circle, I was invited to community events, potluck dinners, and even a traditional luau celebrating his grandson's high school graduation. Slowly, I began building a new social network, different from anything I had known in the Midwest. 3 weeks after arriving, I finally let myself be talked into trying surfing. "You are never too old," insisted Kimo, Franklin's brother-in-law who taught lessons to tourists. Standing on the beach, watching teenagers and 20-somethings glide across waves, I felt ridiculous, even considering it. But something pushed me forward. That first lesson was mostly wipeouts and swallowed seawater, my aging body protesting each fall. But the moment I actually stood up on the board, even for those few seconds before crashing again, I felt a rush of pure joy I hadn't experienced in years. I signed up for another lesson the next day, and then another. By my second month on the island, I had established a routine. Sunrise walks on the beach, coffee with Franklin and the Dawn Patrol as they called themselves, surfing lessons 3 times a week, and afternoons spent either exploring the island or sitting on my lanai reading books from the library. I was sleeping better than I had in years, my body growing stronger from the swimming and surfing. One rainy afternoon, bored and confined to the cottage, I found a set of watercolors in a drawer. They looked unused, probably left by a previous tenant. On a whim, I took them to the lanai and attempted to paint the rain-soaked garden. The result was amateurish, but satisfying in a way I couldn't articulate. The next day, I bought proper paper and more paints. Painting became another unexpected passion. I had never considered myself artistic, my engineering mind always drawn to precision rather than expression. But there was something meditative about trying to capture the light on the mountains or the colors of a sunset that spoke to something long dormant within me. 4 months into my Hawaiian life, my landlord, Dr. Peterson, saw my paintings stacked on the kitchen counter. "These are quite good," he said, sounding genuinely impressed. "Have you been painting long?" "Just since I got here," I admitted. A week later, he connected me with a friend who ran a small community center that occasionally featured local artists. To my astonishment, they offered me a small corner to display some of my work during their monthly art walk. I framed 5 paintings, all scenes from around the island, not expecting much. To my shock, I sold 3 that night. The modest proceeds weren't important. It was the validation that this new part of myself I was discovering had value to others. When people asked about my background, I simply said I was starting a new chapter after retiring from engineering. No one needed to know the painful catalyst that had brought me there. Around the 6-month mark, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Grandpa?" The voice was hesitant but unmistakable. "Thomas." My heart clenched. "Thomas? Is that you?" "Yeah. I am using my friend's phone because I knew you would not answer if you saw Mom's number." Smart kid. He had always been perceptive. "Are you okay?" I asked, suddenly worried. "I am fine. We are all fine, I guess. Except not really. Mom cries a lot now. Ever since you disappeared." He paused. "She would kill me if she knew I was calling you." "I didn't mean to worry you," I said carefully. "The stuff you left. The papers and the letter and everything. Mom read it all, and then locked herself in her room for like 2 days. Dad too. They thought I didn't know, but I heard them talking. You paid off our house? Yes. And all that stuff about things you gave up for Mom when she was growing up? She never knew about a lot of that, did she? No. I never told her. That is not why you do things for your children. A long pause. We have been looking for you. Mom hired someone, a private detective or something, but no one could find you. I hadn't expected that. I needed some space, Thomas. Are you ever coming back? The question hit me hard. I don't know. But I want you to know that none of this is about you or Sarah. I love you both very much. I know that, he said, with a maturity beyond his years. Can I tell Mom I talked to you, that you are okay? I thought about it. Yes. Tell her I am fine. Tell her I needed to find myself. After we hung up, I sat on my lanai watching the sunset, emotions swirling. For the first time since leaving, I allowed myself to consider the possibility of reconnection, not as a return to old patterns, but perhaps as something new and healthier for all of us. 3 weeks after Thomas's call, I received an email from Amanda. It was the first direct communication I had responded to since leaving 6 months earlier. Her message was brief but significant. Dad, I do not know where you are or why you felt you needed to leave this way. The mortgage payoff, the letter, the journals from Mom, all of it destroyed us. I never realized how much you sacrificed. I never saw how I was pushing you away. Please, if you get this, can we talk? Not to convince you to come back, just to talk. Thomas said he spoke to you. He said you sounded different, but okay. We miss you. I miss you. I was wrong. After careful consideration, I replied with my phone number and a suggested time to call. When my phone rang precisely at the agreed time, I took a deep breath before answering. Dad? Amanda's voice sounded smaller somehow, less certain than I remembered. Hello, Amanda. You are really there. You are okay. She was crying now. Where are you? What happened? Why would you just disappear like that? You told me the best gift would be if I disappeared, I replied, not accusingly, but matter-of-factly. I decided to honor that request. A sharp intake of breath. I said that in anger. I didn't mean it literally. I think you did mean it, Amanda. Maybe not forever, but you wanted space from me. You and Brian had been planning my future without my input. You were excluding me from family events. You were treating me like a burden to be managed rather than family to be loved. Silence. Then, when I read your letter, saw all those things you gave up for me that I never knew about, the promotions, the relationship opportunities, even that teaching position in Switzerland after Mom died. Why didn't you ever tell me? That is not why parents make sacrifices, to hold them over their children's heads later. I did those things because I loved you, because being your father was the most important role in my life. And I threw it back in your face, she whispered. Yes. More silence. Then, the mortgage. Dad, that was too much. We cannot accept that. It is done, Amanda. Legally completed, and cannot be reversed. Consider it my final gift, as the father who has apparently become unnecessary in your life. That is not fair. Perhaps not. But neither was planning to move me to a retirement home without consulting me. She didn't deny it. Where are you? Will you at least tell me that? I considered my answer. I am in Hawaii. I have been here since I left. Hawaii? What are you doing there? I surprised myself by laughing lightly. Living. Really living. Maybe for the first time since your mother died. I am surfing, believe it or not, and painting. I have even sold some of my work. You surf? And paint? The disbelief in her voice reminded me of how narrowly she had seen me, just as I had perhaps seen her too narrowly as well. Our conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. We cried together, reminiscing about Margaret, acknowledging painful truths about how our relationship had deteriorated. Amanda admitted that Brian's parents had been pushing them to manage my assets more efficiently, suggesting I was making poor financial choices. But that didn't excuse how I treated you, she added. Nothing could excuse that. Before we hung up, I suggested something that surprised us both. Would you consider a video call next week? All of you, Thomas and Sarah too. I would like to see my grandchildren. The video call was awkward at first. Brian looked uncomfortable, clearly struggling with his role in what had happened. The children were shy initially, then excited as I showed them my small cottage and the view from my lanai. They asked about surfing, fascinated by the idea of their grandfather riding waves. Over the following weeks, we established a new pattern of regular calls. I maintained my boundaries, making it clear I wasn't ready to return to the Midwest. Maybe never would be. This was my home now, but I was open to rebuilding our relationship on new, healthier terms. 3 months later, Amanda proposed something unexpected. What if we came to visit you? Just for a week during the kids' spring break. We would stay in a hotel, not intrude on your space. But the kids really want to see you surf. And honestly, I want to see this new life you have built. Their visit was transformative for all of us. Seeing my island through their eyes gave me fresh appreciation for the paradise I now called home. Thomas took to surfing immediately, while Sarah preferred exploring tide pools with me, collecting shells and identifying fish. Amanda seemed genuinely happy seeing me in this new context, relaxed and engaged in a way I perhaps never had been during her childhood. On their final evening, we had dinner on the beach, a small bonfire keeping us warm as the sun set. Brian, who had been quiet for much of the trip, finally spoke directly to me. I owe you an apology, Chip, a big one. What we did, how we treated you, was inexcusable. Why did it happen? I asked, the question that had haunted me for months. When did I become someone to manage rather than family to respect? He looked away, ashamed. My parents. They kept saying you were making financial mistakes, that you would end up dependent on us if we didn't intervene. They convinced me, and I convinced Amanda. It was never about not wanting you in our lives. It was fear, twisted into something ugly. I nodded, appreciating his honesty if not his actions. Fear makes us do terrible things sometimes. But family should be where we face fears together, not where we manipulate and exclude. Later that night, after Brian had taken the children back to the hotel, Amanda lingered. Dad, I have been reading Mom's journals, the ones you left for me. There is so much there I never knew. So many dreams she had for me, for us as a family. Your mother was a remarkable woman. She would be proud of you now, I think. Standing up for yourself, building this new life. Amanda looked out at the darkened ocean. Can I ask you something? Do you forgive me? I considered the question carefully. Forgiveness isn't a single moment, Amanda. It is a process. I am working on it every day. Some days are easier than others. That is fair. She hesitated. Will you ever come back? Not to live. I understand this is your home now. But to visit? Yes, I said, surprising myself with how certain I felt. Not yet, but someday. When it feels right. After they returned to Chicago, something had fundamentally shifted in our family dynamic. We continued our regular video calls, but now they were genuine conversations rather than obligatory check-ins. Amanda sent me artwork from the children and photos of their activities, not out of duty but real desire to include me. 6 months after their visit, I finally felt ready to return to the Midwest, just for a short trip. I spent a week divided between my old home, which I had decided to keep as a part-time residence, and Amanda's house. Being back in familiar surroundings was strange but healing, allowing me to reconnect with parts of my past I valued, while maintaining the independence I had fought to establish. On my final evening in Chicago, Amanda and I sat alone on her back porch after the children had gone to bed. I never thanked you properly, she said quietly, for everything you did for me growing up. The sacrifices, the love, all of it. You don't need to thank me. That is what parents do. No, but I want to. And I need you to know how sorry I am for what I said that night about wishing you would disappear. I took her hand. In a strange way, that terrible moment gave me the push I needed to rediscover myself. I had been daddy for so long, I had forgotten how to be Chip. You gave me the harsh gift of finding myself again. Still, I wish I could take it back. Life doesn't work that way. We can only move forward, hopefully with more wisdom than before. As I flew back to Kauai the next day, I reflected on the deep lessons of the past year. Sometimes, the most painful words can become the catalyst for necessary change. Sometimes, walking away is the only path to healing. Sometimes, losing what you thought was essential reveals what truly matters. I had learned that self-respect requires boundaries, even with those we love most. That no relationship should come at the cost of your dignity. That it is never too late to reinvent yourself, to discover new passions and abilities. Most importantly, I had learned that love without respect is not really love at all, but a hollow imitation that ultimately damages both parties. Real love requires seeing the other person as they are, not just for what they provide or represent. My life now straddles two worlds: my island home where I paint, surf, and live simply, and occasional visits to the Midwest to maintain the family bonds that, while transformed, remain important to me. It is not the future I had imagined, but it is authentic and hard-won. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved to find yourself again? Or struggled with family who couldn't see the real you? Leave a comment below and share your experience. If this story resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe to hear more journeys of personal growth and family healing. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is disappear, not to punish others, but to rediscover the person you were meant to be. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to honor yourself in all your relationships.